Well, hello, everyone. I appreciate you taking the time to come and join us today as we get to know a partner of ours at Providence, Tim Schindel. So I'm really pleased to introduce you to Tim today. I look forward to having you hear about what he does as the founder of and director of Leading Influence. He works with chaplains that are in all various political leadership spaces, both provincially and federally. And his role as the director of that is to care for our leaders. And so they have chaplains in many of our political spaces, and that care trickles down. As our leaders are cared for, they feel better, and that trickles out to our country. So, Tim, I really appreciate what you do and the care that you take to do that. And it's totally a nonpartisan group. You work with whoever's going to be come Tuesday in the leadership, and so he'll be working with those. So in our partnership, though, with Tim, in the past, they ran leadership training, because helping, again, to support our leaders, to give them ways in thinking of how to engage as a strong leader. So they would offer these weekend leadership training times. And so we've taken that training and blended it with our Transforming Leadership program and created a certificate that we call Lead Well in Transforming Leadership. And so this is what we're going to engage with a bit today. So thank you for taking the time to learn more about our competency-based programs here at Providence. So welcome, Tim, and thank you so much. Your servant leadership really does make a difference, and I really appreciate what you do.
Well, thanks, Karen. It's so great to be with you today and to have our guests with us today. I love talking about what we do. I love talking about leadership development. So I think we're going to have a fun time together today.
Yeah, we look forward to it. So can you share with them when you first started to think about what now is Leading Influence? What was some of the things you were thinking about? How did that motivate you to get going?
Well, it's a bit of a story. So I was pastoring in Kamloops at the time, and I'm a Sunday school kid, and so every year I start reading in Genesis, and in 2005. I just got locked onto the story of Joseph, and I'd read it, I'd have to read it again, read it, have to read it again. After 6 or 8 weeks of reading the life of Joseph, I thought that maybe the Lord was speaking to me about something else. Is there something that I should be reading and studying? And the Lord said, I want you to study Joseph's peers in the scripture, so people who filled similar roles. So then I was looking at people like Daniel, Esther, Nehemiah, and others, and by about August, it became kind of my Wednesday afternoon project that I worked on, and by August I had stacks of yellow paper notes laying all over my desk, and I was like, God, what's the one thing, right? And the tipping point moment for me, the question that changed my life is, God, what do all these people have in common? And the one thing they all have in common is that God placed them in the lives of leaders, and he used them to influence the destiny of nations. And that for me was kind of like, wow, what a cool concept. And my next question was, God, that's amazing. Who does that today? And it was at that moment I knew my whole world had changed. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew my whole world had changed. And from there, God just began the process of talking to me about leaving traditional pastoral ministry and giving myself to investing in the lives of leaders. And so, as God often works, these things never happen in a vacuum. At that point, I'd been involved in some denominational leadership stuff. I had been involved at a community level. I was president of the Chamber of Commerce at the time. So I was well exposed to political leaders and faith leaders. And it was just this journey of learning how to transition from ministry in a church context to ministry in a marketplace / political context. And so that's that was fall of 2005. And in 2007, my wife and I took the very bold step of we sold our house, put our 3 kids in the van, put all of our stuff in the back of a U-Haul, and relocated to Victoria. And it sounds scary. I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, but we trusted Jesus was going to make a way, and he has, and he did, and he continues to do that. So from 2007 until
Mhm.
2015, I was just solo in Victoria, and we had dreams to build this out across the country, but it took a long time to figure it out and to create the model of what political chaplaincy in Canada would look like, because no one was doing this at a provincial level, number one, and number two, just to figure it out and stay away from the partisanship that is so often characterized by American politics, and just understand that, make it clear, have it be understood that we're there for everybody. And one day I had lunch in the dining room in the BC legislature. If you ever come to Victoria, have lunch in the BC legislature in the dining room. It's white cloth, very, very classy place. And I was sitting with a friend from the NDP who had brought a couple of guests, and they were quizzing me on what I was doing. And my friend said, "You know what? Tim is here to serve us with spiritual and emotional support, no matter where we sit in the house." And so that really kind of became the framework for what we do. Now we say we provide excellence in spiritual and emotional care to Canadian politicians. But at that point, it was just, we're here to serve you no matter where you sit in the house. And we have retained that. And today we have a team of chaplains, including me. There are 9 spread across the country, from Victoria to Charlottetown. We have chaplains in Saskatchewan, in Ontario, in Quebec City, and in Ottawa. We're currently looking for people in Manitoba and Alberta and in the Maritimes. So if any of you feel the call, serve on this call, you want to get involved in Winnipeg, please look me up after. I have a tremendous opportunity. Jesus loves you. I have a wonderful plan for your life. So, yeah, at a high level, that's what we do. We are a ministry of presence. So we're not driving issues. We're not legitimately not trying to change people's minds on issues. And there are people outside of what we do who will press us on that. But the reality is that if we take a stand on a political issue and begin to drive something, it alienates us, from probably at least 50% of the room, but often much more than that. And so we don't engage with issues. And the longer we do this, we find that political leaders have enough of their own issues that they don't need us to be talking about political stuff. So, so we just care for people. And the premise is that leaders who are well supported emotionally and spiritually provide better governance. And initially, it's just all about having people who are healthy emotionally and spiritually. But beyond that, if they're leading from a place of health and wellness, that translates into policy, and that translates into conversations about other things. And so, we're always proud when we see those things happen, knowing that, that we had a hand in just providing good support through the process.
Oh, that's awesome. And that how it's watched grow over the time. From my experience working as a chaplain for many years, that coming alongside people, no matter where they are, is so impactful and can make such a difference to just share the burden as people go along and let them know that you're in their corner with them. It just makes such a big difference.
It's really crucial. Like prior to COVID, we were in BC and Toronto, and that was it. And it was COVID in many ways should have killed us, right? Yeah. Because we're relationally, we want to sit down with people and have a cup of coffee, and COVID slammed all of those doors. But what it did was it created so much stress in the lives of leaders that as people just began to pop up and doors began to open for us, and as we were able to place people, I'll give you an example. In Saskatchewan, they had a very interesting way of doing things. But during COVID, our chaplain, they came in to Regina as a cohort and sat for 2 weeks. And our chaplain couldn't get in the building, but they would go on walks all around the grounds together. And it was sort of one after another. And these guys are just unburdening themselves because they have no one else to talk to. So it was interesting to see how that created an opportunity. And we did have done most of our ministry growth as a result of COVID.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally
Not at all what we
unexpected.
expected. Not at all what we expected, but it's the way it happened.
Yeah. So how do you see leadership training as an extension of what you do?
Oh, well, when we sit in the gallery, when you've sat in a gallery for as long as some of us have sat in the gallery, I'm in my 19th year of doing this. After a while, you go, what we really need here are godly people. But we need godly people who understand the context, right? Because many of, right, like, I mean, we're in the middle of an election right now, and there's Christian candidates everywhere, but most of them are reactive, right? So, right, and those who aren't reactive, who are new, are people who generally have no idea what they're getting into, and they're mad about some things, and they're passionate
Mhm.
about some things, and all of that is really great. It's what makes our political system work. But our thought was this: if we could prepare people in advance
Mm.
to serve within the political arena from a kingdom perspective versus a partisan perspective, in the long run, that was going to produce better governance for our nation. And part of it was, what we can just sit here and hope that, Christian candidates get elected and God brings people our way, or we can be proactive and we can lay a foundation. And so we began to lay a foundation. And this in this past electoral run, we had 4 of our graduates run for nominations. None of them made it. One lost in a vote, and one is party
Mm.
politics. One was disqualified in party politics, and sorry, two ran and were lost in a nomination vote. And so, it's just one day, we are confident of this, that one day we will sit in galleries in every province and in Ottawa, and we'll have graduates on both sides of the house all across the country. And we believe that their presence is going to impact the trajectory of our nation.
Amazing. So leadership and that whole nonpartisan leadership training, that pipeline to strong leadership is a huge goal for you, isn't it? That's what I'm hearing.
It's a huge goal. I was sitting with, and he will not mind me using his name. I was sitting with an MP friend. His name is Arnold Viersen. He's out of Alberta, and is a Conservative member. We were having dinner we were sitting together at the National
Mhm.
Leadership Dinner, and in true Alberta fashion, Arnold said to me, he said, Tim, everybody wants more Christian leaders in Ottawa, but very few people understand that we need to build a pipeline to get them here. And it was the pipeline imagery that kind of made me smile when he said it. But that idea has just burns in me, that if we can just build a pipeline that develops godly leaders to serve in the political arena, how much better our nation would be. And it doesn't even matter where they sit in the room, right? If they're well
Mhm.
equipped and they understand servant leadership, and they view leadership through a kingdom grid versus just a partisan grid, it puts us light years ahead. And so that's
Mhm.
what we're working on. And we started with Lead Well during COVID, and now we're doing some stuff, and we're not talking about this today, but we're doing some stuff with high schoolers, and because if we can capture people when they're 17 and 18, capture their attention and sow the seed
Mhm.
of political engagement and political leadership when they're making career choices, that just accelerates the process. So we've got the high school thing that we're doing, and we've got
Mhm.
this that we're doing with you guys with Providence. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, pretty excited about it.
Yeah. So we're doing this, as I said, is an outworking part of our transforming leadership program, and so that, of course, is done through competency-based education. So that is where a student is placed in a context, or they're already in a context, and they apply that learning as they develop it. They're going to display it in that context. So we've done this intentionally with this certificate, so that the students that take the certificate are going to then apply their learning in their context, wherever that might be, so that it that context then flavors their education, and they have direct application to it. So that is the unique thing about this program, and
Yeah,
all our
exactly.
programs within the Center for
Exactly.
On-Demand
Now, I tell
Education.
you, Karen, what I love the competency model
Mhm.
because experience and kind of a practical input will always take you further than just theory. Theory is
Mhm.
fun, but the beauty of the competency model is as they graduate, they're gaining and they're learning very, very practical ways to apply what they're learning and given a context in which to do it, and a mentoring setup. So I think it's brilliant. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing this get off the ground and go.
Yeah. The other unique part of it is that, yes, you're going to take in things, you're going to learn stuff that's up on the platform that you're going to work through, but you're also paired with a mentor team. So the student is paired with a mentor in their context, but also an academic mentor from Providence. So you get all this personalized
Mhm.
feedback, and
Yeah.
opportunity to bounce things off them, and have conversations with people that are further down the road than you. And to me, it's such an amazing opportunity to have that time with people that come with so much wisdom and prior
Yeah,
experience.
exactly right. And just the idea like that you've got this team of people around you who are committed to your success. Like it's not about,
Mhm.
okay, we're going to raise the bar a little higher now so that maybe you'll
Yep.
fail this time. Like it's not that, right? It's
No.
it's this idea that we're pouring into our students so that we get wins and they get
Mhm.
wins, right? And in terms of what we're doing, I think when participants win, then ultimately, if they go into politics or leadership at any level, then the nation wins, and the province wins, and their city wins, and their community wins, and that stuff is just what makes my heart beat faster.
Mhm. That, again, that trickle down effect,
Exactly.
um, makes a big difference. And doing things in partnership, like our partnership, but then also as students in partnership with their mentors. It's
Yeah, yeah. It's
so.
I'm very excited about the model. I think it's going to be.
Mhm. Yeah. So this is a smaller like this is a certificate, not a whole degree, but of course it can be laddered. So this is a thing, a complete thing in itself, but also know that it can be then, it's university credit. It can be applied to any university, added to a degree, added to our Transforming Leadership MA. You can go on and get your full MA, and blend this into our existing program. So you'd be already down the road. So there's pluses to what this offers. So how do you see this impacting, like, on the ground? So as a student, how do you see this building them up? How do you see this engaging with them?
Yeah, that very good question. So when we built the course, the vision behind it was we wanted actual practitioners
Hmm.
doing, like, like everything is video based. So we have interviews with, you know sitting politicians, and we have interviews with community leaders, and everything is everybody who's teaching, talking, if you will, is an actual practitioner. So you don't have the theorist
Hmm.
piece. So you've got people who actually know what works and what doesn't work. That's number one, and I think
Hmm.
that's gold. Number two, we've got I'm doing some mentoring. We've our Providence is doing some stuff. Leading Influence is providing an academic overseer as well, and so we've
Hmm.
got this kind of a hub of people who can just support you all the way through. And that piece to me is, because sometimes distance education is challenging because you're all on your own, but really here you're never alone. and
Mhm.
there's as much support available to you as you want to have at whatever level you have, plus clear paths as to what needs to happen next and what it looks like and all of that other stuff. So it's lots of conversations, lots of mentoring opportunities, and lots of mentoring support.
Yeah, that's, I think, key to what we've designed is that
Mm,
aspect of how supported you are. Oftentimes, I describe competency-based education as nurtured learning.
yes,
Um,
that's a good way
it's
to
the
do
bar is high because you do have to, with competency-based education, you move through the program not by checking your assignment checklist box, but by just displaying that you are proficient in the expectations that are given for within the certificate. And so as you display that and as you work towards that, your mentors are pushing you along. They may assign additional assignments to get you there, or they may suggest a different tack to help you out with certain things. They may keep you in a certain area longer just because that's one area you struggle with, and they may move you faster through another area because that's an area where you already excel. And so you're just going to strengthen that foundation. So it's that ebb and flow of that, but that nurtured learning is something that I really love about the competency-based education
it.
format.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I love it a lot. I think it'll be great. And the other piece that we do is just real world experience, because with
Mm-hmm.
this particular course, the idea is we'll work with the relationships we have to help people get into an MLA office or an MP office as a volunteer, do a little bit of serving, and whatever
Mm-hmm.
that looks like, and
Yep.
and then that will translate into relationships with the member and
Mm-hmm.
conversations, all of that stuff. So always be careful not to overpromise, but
Yeah.
in most cases, we can find, particularly Christian members who are happy to to facilitate the development of other Christians who want to get into politics.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and with this current election, we've got some people who have recently stepped away who have decades of experience in public service, and
Mm-hmm.
um, and who want to see, right, not necessarily their name carried forward, but their legacy of presence carried forward. So they're
Mm-hmm.
willing to pour themselves into other people, and so yeah, very excited about that.
So you mentioned you know, pairing people up, but talk about who you see this could really benefit. Like what kind of students would you be looking for?
Well, I think that it would really help to have an interest in politics, right? Out of the gate, right? Within
Yeah,
certainly within the
a good
context of
first step.
retail course, right? You either have an interest or you have some aspirations that maybe you've never said to anybody, but maybe one day you'd like to
Mm-hmm.
run for local council, or you'd like to run for
Mm-hmm.
provincial or federal office. And if that's you, well, then you're a great candidate. If you're just really interested in what it would be like to serve, maybe not in elected office, but within bureaucracy, this is a great opportunity. And so sometimes we think of that serving Jesus really is just limited to church stuff, but really we need godly men and women in places of position or places of leadership and influence all across the country. And so
Mm-hmm.
you want to work in the bureaucracy, or run for school board or whatever it is. This is a great course that will just help you develop what it means to be a kingdom leader and a servant leader, and to do that again from with a kingdom grid versus a partisan grid. So if you have aspirations, you're our people. And if you don't have aspirations, you're still our people.
Um, how do you choose the chaplains that work with you in the various legislatures?
Well, I'd like to take credit and say, well, I have this master plan and this profile, but the reality is that, quite honestly, God has just sent us remarkable and capable people. Most of our chaplains have a pastoral background. We are just
Mhm.
adding someone right now who has a counseling background, and that will
Mhm.
be a first for us. But most people have a pastoral background, um, but they're so varied, right? Like just sort of in the way that it happens. Our BC chaplain, strong pastoral background, a Saskatchewan chaplain. Prior to going into pastoral ministry, was a professional engineer. And so there's our Quebec chaplain was a ER doctor and a psychotherapist prior to joining our team. Now he's working
Mhm.
within a church context. So it's and our PEI chaplain is a career pastor. Our Ottawa chaplains career people. So it's a diversity. So, but for us, it's really about, do you have calling? Do you have a sense of
Mhm.
calling around this? Number one. Number two, are you good with people? Can you strike up a conversation with a stranger? And can
Mhm.
you have the ability to keep a confidence, and the rest of the stuff we'll just teach you kind of as we go along and mentor you into it. But why, Karen, would you like to apply? I'm kidding.
I think Providence is keeping me busy enough.
I think you're pretty busy where you are, yeah. So,
But if any of your chaplains want to do more chaplaincy training, we have an awesome
you have a
chaplaincy
wonder,
program. Just saying.
exactly. We could quid pro quo. Yes, we could
Yes, actually
quid
we
pro
do.
quo.
No, joking aside, our
Yeah,
chaplaincy program is remarkable.
I'm
And
sure it is.
and we also have in two parts. There's a certificate. So if they want to just do our distinct chaplaincy courses as a certificate or do the full MA, we have both. But anyway, now you're everyone on the call. You're getting a side
Exactly,
pitch there.
exactly. But bring it back to Leadwell, Karen. We want to sign people up for Leadwell today.
Exactly. Lead well is today. And but yeah, but yes, getting back to that. So sounds like how you describe students. It's just anyone that's looking to lead with that political lens on,
Mhm.
and could be a great candidate for this certificate, and it would
Yeah,
be
absolutely. And
a
I think it's just,
useful thing to study.
yeah, I think it's a very useful thing to study because, while we don't really like it, the reality is that politics touches your life every day. I had this
Mm,
conversation with somebody the other day. Well, I don't like politics. It's like, well, politics decides your healthcare, politics decides your education,
mm,
politics decides whether your road gets paved. So maybe you should think differently about you could think differently about this. So, and I think just under being aware, and Karen, you and I had a
mhm,
conversation on our dry run, just about understanding how the political process works, understanding
mhm,
why it's okay, very tongue in cheek, but addressing an issue today, why you can safely mark your ballot with a pencil and not worry that somebody's going to erase the mark, right? Like, it's like, if
mhm,
if we understand how things work, it keeps us from chasing all kinds of conspiracy theories
mhm,
that just kind of wind up marginalizing us from the mainstream. And again, right, just along that same line, I think it's really important that people of faith have a voice at the table. But if you don't understand the process, you'll
mhm,
never no one will take you seriously at the table if you come to the table full of conspiracy theories, right? So and
mhm.
this will help you be able to sort out what's legit and what's not, and why, and it'll just help you.
Mm. I love how you've designed it that it is for any political stripe. It's because there's no essentially one party better than another in a Christian
There is no
view.
party.
I,
Yes, Jesus does not. I love talking about this. Jesus does not have a political favorite. And we talk often about the leading influence, matrix, right? Which is, in every political party in the country. Well, let's say the big four, so that the Greens, the NDP, the Libs, and the Conservatives. Those four political parties and others, I'm sure, there is a redeeming kingdom value that exists within each one of them, and we won't do it today necessarily, but we talk about it in the course, how that every party has a redeeming kingdom attribute, and how that it doesn't matter who you vote for. Like Jesus could just as easily, and I won't horrify anybody here, but Jesus could just as easily, if he was voting, vote for the Greens and be within, honor the principles of Scripture, or orange or red or blue, and not in any way violate the principles of Scripture, because there's a redeeming value in each one. But I don't think for a second that Jesus says, well, I'm not going to name a particular, well, I will actually. Jesus would never say, I just really love Team Red and I don't care about anybody else, right? Or Team Blue or Team Green or Team Orange, because I think the values of the kingdom are spread across the political spectrum. And depending on where you are in the country, depending on where you are in the country, there are people who are sold out to Jesus who vote for any one of those parties. And so, it's easy, and sometimes in our bubble, just to assume it's this way. But, my friends, because I live on Vancouver Island, where we hug trees and eat granola, there are many, many people, and churches that partner with us, coming from churches that partner with us, who are hard greens and oranges. And you know what? I'm not going to argue with them. I'll just celebrate that they have an insight into politics and the Scriptures that actually aligns with the heart and mind of God. So you should take the course just to learn the rest of the story. That would alone be worth the price of admission.
I love that, your viewpoint on that, and the emphasis that you're placing to work across the board for people to really think and apply their faith to their leadership, and that will really make a difference in the long run. So I appreciate that. Just those of you who are listening on the call, we're getting near to the end of our conversation. So at the end, we want to take time for any of your questions. So at this point, if you want to start putting things into the chat, send them off, and we'll put Tim further on the spot with your questions, and see what he can tell us. Also, I'm going to ask one of our team members to put in the chat the link on our website to the LeadWell certificate, so you can see more information there and ways to sign up. Because this is again done through competency-based education, which we run outside of the semester system. So you can start anytime. You can start tomorrow. We can get you linked up and started. So, and then it runs until you're done, because you have to move through it as you develop and display your proficiency. So again, we set it to a monthly subscription price, and you move through that as you go forward. So, Tim, do you have anything, final comments you want to end up with before we head into the question and answer time?
I don't know. I feel like I've been flying without a net here. I mean, we had questions to work off of, and we kind of hit them here, there, and everywhere. So, I love just kind of being, spontaneous. But I think we've kind of hit it, Karen. I think we've covered what we wanted to cover today. So if people have questions, I'm watching the chat. Somebody's typing something here, so we'll see.
Yeah, but we do appreciate those of you who are able to get on the call. Just to know that it has been recorded. We will be putting that recording up, but also sending it out to all of you that registered. We'll send it to you directly, but it will also be on our website, along with all our other webinars that we put on in the past. So if you want to look back and learn more about transforming leadership, or more about competency-based education, or more about effective communication, that was our last one last year, or last month. Oh, not last year.
Actually, while we're waiting, let me we'll go a little off script. Um, um, I see something. Our team sees something very exciting happening across the country with what God is doing, and most people do not know this, but at a very high level, Christians are overrepresented in terms
Mm.
of the number of seats in a particular in a particular legislature. Christians generally are, somewhere, 4 or 5% of the population. And I mean, this is not a hard and fast rule, but in most provinces, and certainly in Ottawa, we are probably represented at, anywhere from 10 to 20, sometimes 25% of members in different legislatures across the country are believers. And so you see that God is doing something that we we are there's a lot of believers there, and at a staff level, like in some cases 25-30% um, um, of staffers on the Hill in Ottawa or in provinces are believers. And so I am, on the
Interesting.
one hand, it's like I look at what's happening in our country and I gulp. And on the other hand, it's like I see all of these believers in positions of and places of influence, and young people in particular. It's like, no, we have a hope and a future. We have a hope and a future. Ernie's got a question.
Yes.
Can I read it, Karen? Just
Yeah,
because now
you
I'm
go
kind of,
ahead.
right?
Yeah.
Any advice as to how to convince authorities that spiritual, emotional, mental health is as important as physical health, and how they're linked? Well, Ernie, I would say this: that the best way to convince authorities follows the same path as what you would do to convince anybody else, right? If you have a relationship with them, they're far more likely to listen to you and give you the time of day.
Mm.
And so if you invest in relationship versus cold call and coming in as an outsider, it's a tough go as outsiders to change anyone's mind. Number one. Number two, relationship is everything. Number three, this is what I've learned, is that the easiest place to decide where the government should spend its money is far away from government. But when you're actually in the room and when you're actually empowered to make the decision, everything is nuanced, and decisions are far more complex when you have to stand up and vote than they are if you're sitting in the gallery or at home. And so I would encourage you and to think about it in terms of, how do I build relationships with stakeholders and influencers so that I can present my case. Or you could just
Yeah.
rail away on social media, whatever you want. But the former is better
Probably
than the
not that.
latter. Ernie, and I'm not saying you would do that. You're on this call, so you're already, bright and shining. No to social media. Yes, I agree. Ernie, send me a friend request on LinkedIn. We'll connect.
I have a question from Jeff, who's our dean of our seminary. He's listening in as well. So he says, "Great presentation, Tim. I'm wondering how you as a leader fight the urge to take shortcuts that would compensate your principles but get faster results."
Well, that's a very good question, Jeff. I will tell you quite honestly that when we began the ministry, like Barb and I, we threw ourselves completely into this. We put our lives on the line to do this, and the ministry was built around very clear and particular values. And I know that I'm watching something right now and I won't name names or anything like that, but with other ministries in the country who are stoking fear within the church around the possibility of churches losing their charitable status. And it's like, I know, because of what I'm doing, I know that all of that is a red herring. I know that it was not the Liberal government that did this. I know that it was the BC Humanist Society who made that recommendation. And I know this, that if the government was to take away charitable status for churches, they would have to take it away from Muslims, and they would have to take it away from Sikhs, They have to take it away from Hindus, and they would have to take it away from synagogues. So if you're going to take charitable status away from all of those groups, that's the equivalent of political suicide. But again, because people don't think about the dynamics, right? So we're choosing not to go down the easy win road. We're choosing not to go to jump on those bandwagons, because we know that if we sell our souls, we never get them back. And we are that committed to serving people with integrity, and like within legislatures and in parliament, serving leaders with integrity and a Christ-like spirit and a servant leader attitude to this thing, that we're not gonna promote that stuff, because I know that it's just all a red herring, and we're just going to do this with integrity and honor, because we just poured too much into this to throw it away for a quick win. What does it look for leaders to provide support in a political context? Oh, good. Well, we're doing that right now. In fact, Carrie and I were talking about this. How do we support in a political contest during election season? We do this. We reach out to candidates. We assure them of our support for them. We tell them who we are, tell them what we do, and we don't share political posts. We don't engage in any of that. We are people first. Politics is really not a priority for us. We're all about the people. Would you say some of the greatest or unique challenges facing those working in politics? Oh, politics is so divisive, and politics will absolutely consume you if you let it. And I'm thinking right now of, in my mind, one of the godliest politicians in all of Canada, who walks out this tightrope of serving Jesus while honoring the principles of his political party, and often shedding tears as he does it. And he knows that God has placed him in that place. And so it's very, very difficult. The personal toll that principled politicians pay is enormous. If you're in government, if you're in opposition, being a politician is a pretty good gig, because you just get to complain about everything. But if you're in government as a person of faith, you can expect that the church will turn against you at different times along the way, because they won't like your stand. And I'll tell you, the Christians are the hardest people to satisfy at a political level. We're just cutthroat. But I have watched people of principle support the government, because that's their job. And I'll tell you, in one situation in Ontario, I was in the room when the Ontario legislature made a quote unanimous decision. There was 125 people that served there. 75 were in the room, 50 had left before the vote was called, and mostly people of faith and principle on both sides of the issue. And I got to this member's office, and he was white-faced, and he played me a voicemail from a well-known faith-based organization that was pushing him hard to vote in a particular way. And the message went like this: if you can't vote against that issue, you should be embarrassed to call yourself a Christian. And it's like, you know what? It is very, very difficult to get believers elected. And it is particularly difficult to get government leaders elected. And so this idea that we have the power to pull strings, and that they should vote a particular way just because it aligns with our personal preference, it's political suicide to do it. And what we need to understand is, we want godly men and women in the room who can advocate in caucus and on committee and in hallways and over coffee in the middle of the day, or over dinner in an evening, to advocate for kingdom principles and values, because that's where the real value is. leaders decide and caucuses decide how people are going to stand on votes. But if you vote against your caucus, you get kicked out of caucus, and once you're out of caucus, your influence is gone. And so, godly men and women in the room who are prepared, because politics is all about compromise, who are prepared to compromise on an issue but not on their faith, those people are gold, and you want to keep them and see them and support them and keep them elected for as long as you can. Well, let's see. Did anybody leave after that? No, we're still.
No. But I think the goal of how you've designed the certificate is to help people get to
Yes.
work in that level of gold.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
To live out their life faithfully, to influence in such a way that they can be heard and they can make a difference.
Yeah, like the person that I mentioned, that I refer to him as the godliest politician, Canadian politician I know, is actually featured in one of the segments in the course, and you see it even in the interview. I think he has a teary moment, and he's not someone who is given to tears at every moment, but he just honestly loves Jesus so much and wants to serve so well. That sometimes for him it's just an emotional, things get emotional in a good way for him. He is kind and well spoken and Christ-like in his debates and the way he conducts himself. But I think that it's like aspire to be like this person, right? I would say, right? Aspire to represent Christ like this person represents Christ. So there you go. But a good question, Mike.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, thank you, Tim, for taking the time today. Thank you, everyone else, for joining in and the questions that you've posted. Please continue to engage with us, and as we continue to share about what we do at the Center for On-Demand Education. But I really want to thank you for joining in today. Tim, thank you again so much for what you do and how you intentionally care for others and look for the best of them, and hope to bring that out of them as you continue to support them in what they do in our political.
And let me say, what a great day it was when you walked across the room at Mission Fest and said, "Would you guys be interested in doing this thing with us?" And honestly, you've taken Leadwell from what it was and made it so much better. And we're really proud to be aligned with Providence in this venture. And because I think it just gives us much greater reach and the opportunity for much greater impact. I have dropped my email address into the chat. If anyone who's watching, you want to go further with me or whatever, I'm happy to have a conversation with you and unpack a little bit more of the course or whatever it might be. But thank you so much for taking the time. I know everybody's busy. And it's grad weekend for you at Providence as well. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here and giving me an opportunity to talk about what I love to do.
No, thanks so much again. And yes, reach out to Tim, reach out to myself with any questions you have. So have a wonderful day. Enjoy that sunshine. And thanks again for taking the time.
All right. God bless you, everybody.
Yeah. God bless you.